Hello everyone. Today we're going to be going through another set of 3 puzzles with the example and 2 contest puzzles from Hexagony. Today we're going to be going through the Bosnian Road. Now this is a puzzle type that's a lot less common than a lot of other puzzle types in the contest. So the rules are to shade themselves to form a single snake-like loop that doesn't touch itself even at a point. So all shaded cells, another way of putting that, all shaded cells share an edge with 2 other shaded cells. And numbered cells may not be shaded and give the number of shaded cells in the surrounding up to 8 cells. Okay, so we have one snaky loop. So a really common thing to do with a snaky loop puzzle is this kind of one. Since we can't really just dive in here and be done, we can only worry about the corners. This would be a dead end, therefore it's this one, it has to touch 2. If we don't take this bottom channel, we're not going to be able to get to 6. So we take the bottom channel. Remember, it can't touch at a point. You need to cut through here. You need to come down here. And the really important thing to note, and the reason I made the example like this, is all of the cells do not have to be visited at once, as you can see from the 4 and the 6. They can be, but they don't have to be. This is a pretty neat puzzle type. Has a lot of logical depth on larger grids, like the first puzzle in the contest. So here's the first puzzle in the contest. This was worth 15 points, and honestly, it probably could have been worth 20. So we're going to do the same thing we did with the 1, except now we don't know the direction it will have to go. We can look at this 6 and say, okay, if it doesn't come down here, it's not going to ever get to 6. But there's not really a lot of easy progress to make here, until you realize the corner touching rule on almost maximal numbers. We'll start with the 7, and we'll say all of the corners must be shaded. Because if a corner were not shaded, then in order to fill the rest, we would have to have it touching itself. Which, it can't do that. We can also use the same logic we did with this 6 to say this cell must be shaded. But it's not so, and we can also say this cell, I was going to say it's not so clear, but this one must be shaded because if it's not, then we'll make a premature loop. We can also say the same for this cell, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. This corner cell must be used, but okay. Now if we look at the 4, we get the exact same step with these 2 corners. This is the thing that I realized when I was constructing this puzzle. And this is the thing that I really remember from constructing this puzzle. This 4 interacts with this 6. Now, how does it do that? Well, can we shade both of these 2 cells? And the answer is no. And the simple reason for that is you can't have a T, so we get both of these, and now it doesn't work, because we have touching itself at a point. But we also can't avoid shading one of those 2 cells. So in yellow, we have this kind of either or. But can it be here? Well, once you kind of bend outwards, look what that does to the 6. It removes 3 cells from consideration. Therefore, not shaded, shaded, cannot have both of these, so we get all of that. And, that is kind of what I intended as the break-in to this Bosnian Road puzzle. Now, we don't yet know whether we're going to connect through here to get the 4, or if we're going to go up here, but we do know that we can't shade both of these. So we get this one, must keep going, comes around the 5. Now this 3, this cell must be shaded, because if it's not, this top part doesn't work. Which is actually going to result in 4. We're going to get the same kind of push. This one's not shaded. This one's not. This one is. Same deduction as earlier. And now we need to get in here and out of this bottom right corner. That's something that has to be done, and it has to go adjacent to this 4. So, seeing as there's only these two passages, they both have to be used, which satisfies the 4, satisfies the 1, kind of breaks over here, pushes the rest of the numbers around. This one's not used, this one's not used. We get the rest of the 5, and then, nope, yep, and that is the rest of the 6. So this puzzle is kind of all about this 4-6 interaction, and that kind of gives you everything else you need to know once you get it. Without that interaction, it can be a little trickier to get a foothold, but I'm sure that you could solve it without realizing that, or by just bashing the possibilities. But I hope that shows how you can use the diagonal touching constraint in a Bosnian Road puzzle, or any snaky puzzle, to really just push parts of the grid around and make some progress. Now, for a puzzle where you can't do any of that. So this one was also worth 15 points, and you'll notice that the corner touching, just like with Corrado, is no longer even a thing. So how in the world do you do Bosnian Road on a hexagonal grid when you can't do that? Interesting. Whatever. So first thing you can do is the same kind of thing with this 1, where this is the only one that's likely to work. Or rather, any one will have a corner. So it's not this one, it's not this one, definitely not this one, not this one. Oh look, now we just have 4. And so that's kind of the starting point. Very simple starting point. Now we can use these two, this 5 and 3. If we come back here, it gives us 4. And if we don't come back here, it maximizes at 3. So it maximizes at 3, and it does come back here. So these two are going to connect, else we're going to overload this 2. Which means, no, these two cells are not used. Can we avoid using this cell by the 4 now? And the answer to that question is no. We must use it, because if we don't, we can't use either of these two. But that also means we can't avoid using both of these two for the 2. So, the snake goes around there. We cannot come through this path for the 3. In particular, this cell forces this cell, which now satisfies the 2. And this left side is pretty much the easy part of the puzzle. So, where do you go from here? Well, can't use this cell, else you overload, just immediately. And now this group of 3, I think, is where things, you can get an interesting deduction. So we're going to go to light gray. What happens if we try and take all 3 of these by avoiding this cell? Well, can't touch, can't touch. Oh, look, it's forced to close the loop prematurely. Therefore, this is used, this is used. We get this kind of snake path. Cannot go under the 2. And it's a little unclear where else this is going at the bottom. So we'll come to that later once we have information from the top. This cell can't be shaded and force another shaded cell. This one can't be used without using this one as well. So we get this and this. We can't take both, so we have to take this one. We're going to be using one of these, so we are going to use one of these as well. And if we try and take this channel here, well, that seems possible until you get down to this 4. So it's going to be here, here, here. Kind of a little more easy progress. And now, what about this 4? Well, we cannot unshade this cell without also unshading this cell, and then the 4 doesn't work. So these are both shaded. This has to come out. This 3 is now maximized. Unshade here, and shade the rest of the grid, and this is the solution to the second Bosnian Road from Hexagony. I actually broke this puzzle when I was constructing it the first time. I made a bad deduction on the right side, and I had to work to fix it. But this kind of premature loop closing is just kind of what I was trying to go for, with having to avoid premature loop closing. Which this type was picked for Hexagony just because it's basically a loop type that uses shading cells. And so the rules could be written in a way that immediately translates, which was the entire goal. Anyway, I hope that was informative. I hope these puzzles were interesting. And we'll be back next time with the next set of 3. Until then, later.